Hey, this is EQO, and you're listening to The Centering.
Sounds good to me. All right. You ladies ready? Not that there's anything
Let's
wrong
do
if
it.
you're ladies, but are you ready?
Let's go.
Turn that up a little bit.
Hey, this is EQO, and you're listening to The Centering.
Okay, so let's start.
Hello. Hello and welcome to another edition of The Center Ring, aka TCR, aka your favorite esports podcast. Episode 152, coming to you live, pre-recorded from an undisclosed location. The date, April 8th, 2019. The time, 8:44 p.m. Central Standard Time. This will be the best episode ever. It's going to be a little different, maybe a little less actual esports talk, but we'll find a way to make it work as we dive into the hot topic recently in the esports world, and that's the importance of mental health, or just the effects of gaming on mental health. It's been in the news. Prince Harry gave his opinion on it, for whatever that's worth, but he's a pretty big, important person, so I hear, as far as an influencer goes. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and in relations to effect with Overwatch and the Dallas Fuel. So we're going to discuss that here in a second, but before we do, let's introduce everyone. Hello, my name is Tim. I'll be one of your captains for this journey into esports. Alongside me, as always, we have Anuj. Hello, Anuj.
Hello. How you guys doing?
What up?
What up, dude?
I'm liking the jersey.
Thank you.
And if you're watching us on Twitch, which we do stream every Monday, when we do the shows live, you can see his Prince of Bel-Air jersey. And then we have Brett. Hello, Brett.
What's up, guys?
What is up?
What up?
What is up?
That deep voice. I like
I
it.
know.
Right. Man.
I know, man. You doing okay, bud? Are you gonna make it through the show?
I will do it for the listener and you
Okay.
guys.
And as you do it for the listener, I will ride the volume for you all show long as your voice
Appreciate you, fam.
fluctuates from so deep no one can hear it to voice cracking as you are about to die.
Yep.
I kind of want
But-
Brett to like read books to me while I'm sleeping, or like just talk.
And just
See-
a Morgan Freeman
Yeah.
voice.
And just say nice things. I like it.
Maybe he can.
Yeah.
Maybe he can.
And the itsy bitsy spider.
Before we get too far
Word up
into
the
it, let's
spouty.
introduce our social media, shall we? At the Center Ring on Twitter. TCR.gg is the website. It's got links to Discord, YouTube. That's pretty much the two important things on there. So go ahead and join our Discord, be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think of the show. If you listen on iTunes, what's the other one? I use it. Castbox, I think it's what it's called, on Android. You can leave reviews on those. We love reviews. We love reading them. If they're good. If they're bad, just don't worry about it. Don't waste your time. Don't leave a bad review. But if you like it, go ahead and leave us a review, and everything that helps. That's the way you can support the show. But let's get into today's discussion, because it's been a kind of an interesting week on how all this has timed out in the esports world, as video games has really taken storm in the public eye, I guess you could say, as Fortnite has just captivated every age group known to man, and as Twitch becomes as huge as it's became, you have every age group getting involved, right? You have the elderly are streaming and watching, as you have a 12-year-old who's streaming and watching, and it's just it's you can now be a gaming superstar, right? in the normal household of the world, where before it might have been like a niche thing. Like, yeah, gamers knew who other gamers were, but your parents probably wouldn't know. Well, now parents know who Ninja is, right? They know who Summit is. Dr. Disrespect. It's weird that parents know these guys where, what, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, then maybe not so much. So it's been out there. So it's all creeped up on this mental health discussion, and we're going to get into that in a second. But part of that started all this is Effect of the Dallas Fuel recently announced his retirement from the Overwatch League, mainly driven because of mental health issues, and we'll get into that in a second. But before, we are an esports show, and I do think it's our responsibility to also talk the logistics, the business side of this move for the Dallas Fuel. So let's just take 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get into kind of the heavier discussion. But right now, I just want to discuss the effect of Effect leaving the Dallas Fuel.
Yeah, I mean, the effect is the team loses a guy that they like, that's well respected in the Overwatch League. I mean, there's not one person that looks at the guy and is like, "Man, good riddance," right? He's loved by everyone, and it was a steep drop off. And maybe that has something to play in, and maybe we can discuss this here in a minute, just kind of the steep fall of Effect in just like a year's time. But the immediate impact to the team on the server, there isn't one because he wasn't really a huge part of what they were doing. It's
Mhm.
more so just the icon that he is
Right.
leaving the team.
I
It's the end of an era.
It is. Well, because I mean, he's been on the team, and he was well known before Overwatch League, right? Overwatch League is only what, a season and a stage into it, right? So obviously
hmm
he wasn't building up superstardom just from Overwatch League. He was well known prior to. Last season he took the last 2 stages off. He came
hmm
back for this one, and everyone was very hyped up for it because, all right, once again, here's the best DPS player in the world from what we are told. And I feel like there's a lot left to be desired here, because like you said it, Brett, and it's they tried. The Dallas Fuel really tried using him at the start of the season, and whether it be his skill drop off, I think it was just the meta. I don't think the meta allowed Effect to play the way he plays, right? You couldn't just let him go off and do his DPS thing with the way the meta was last stage and for the most part this stage. So eventually he was somewhat benched for the most part. And we even asked the question in our, kind of stage 1 recap of the Fuel, which you can see on our YouTube page, like, where is his place on the team right now? And I guess, obviously we got our answer, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess he kind of struggled to adapt just the way that Overwatch is kind of evolving to, where DPS DPS superstars in the league are having to flex. And when they
mhm.
do flex, they're flexing at a high level, aka Carpe. Or if you
AKM.
want to look at the Dynasty, Fleta. Like these are guys that can go from DPS to off tank, or I mean, I mean even main tank. If you want to talk about Taimu, I mean, last year for the Fuel, I mean he wasn't like a superstar as a main tank, but he was able to
Yeah, but look at
flex.
like AKM's transformation. He went from being
Yeah,
what was going to be your
exactly.
76 to Genji to now like one of the best Zaryas in the league.
Right. And I think, more to your point, Tim, I think AKM's emergence, I guess. Is that the right word?
It's a real
Uh
word.
Yep.
yeah, it's a real word, right? Kind of left him or rendered him useless on the team. He didn't really have a spot, which maybe played into, I mean, I'm sure it goes deeper than not having a spot on the team, but kind of deeper into it. I mean, it's just a kind of a notch on why he is the way he is or in the state he is right now.
Of
I
course.
I agree with kind of what both of y'all were saying there in the sense that with the Effect, there was a lot to be desired there, right? There was so much potential going in. With the Dallas Fuel, they were the team that had all the stars going into the first season of Overwatch League, and he was one of the draws. With him, Taimu, Siegel, like all these guys were kind of the well-known names prior to starting the league, and so it's unfortunate. Um, it's just more of a loss, I think, from a personality standpoint, though, when it comes to him. And just again, the meta wasn't in his favor. It hasn't been a heavy DPS meta for a while now, so um, you kind of wonder what could have been if it was a little different for him.
Yeah, and that's really where I'm left at. Is like, man, if only things would have worked out. Like, how long would he have stayed in the league for, right? And we're seeing this a lot. All of a sudden, like with Overwatch League, like a string of players have retired, and most of them, and even in effects, kind of goodbye letter stating like the game's just not fun anymore for them.
Yeah.
Now, we'll dive into that in a minute, but I think that's a lot of the sentiment of the players. And something that you never really had to deal with in other esports is the fact, like, retiring, like actually announcing retiring, right? There's a lot of Counter-Strike players that just kind of fizzle away, and then they might show up on some what would be comparable to like a tier 2 or 3 team, but even then you kind of just look at it as, well, that's just kind of like his pug team almost, right? Like look at like
Yeah.
Shroud or how they did that for a while.
It is unique to see it in Overwatch because like in Counter-Strike, typically the guys that are retiring are in like their mid-20s, right? And go on to do something else. Effect is 21. He barely is of age to drink in the United States, and he's retiring. Because the game's not fun anymore. Which, I mean, are we going to dive into that, or I mean, that would be a good topic
because I think
to discuss
a lot
another
more
episode.
of a discussion than the time that we
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
Because I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
you
that
can
would be a whole
almost
episode.
stretch that into other, because it. And I'll say this on that note, and then we'll save it for another episode. We'll table it for now. It is weird, but I think it's just we're entering into a new world of esports with franchising and actual contracts that we're just now using these phrases of retirement and things like that, where before I guess you would just say, oh, he's no longer on a team, right? You would never have to formally announce like, no, I'm done, right? I'm retiring. But you see that I mean, even in traditional sports, you see guys retire from football or basketball way young, and you're like, why would you do that, right? Like, look at David Irving on the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
He retired because he wasn't having fun, and they said, all right, pick weed or football, and he's like, all right, gonna go weed. So, on the surface, of course, there's more to it, but this is not the podcast to discuss
Oh,
that.
it's
He
very
also
close.
he kind of fits into this full discussion that we're about to have also
Right,
with
as
David
far
Yeah,
as
Irving.
because
just
he
mental
he has
health.
his own. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
And I do.
Yeah.
Let's
Part of that
let's
is
transition.
franchising, though, right? Like the
Well, yeah.
retirement thing. You kind
Yeah, and
of
that's what I'm saying, right? It's
almost have to do it a little bit more formally in Overwatch than
that's
you
exactly
would
what I'm saying. Like
a
we never had to
CS.
worry about the terminology of retirement back in the day.
Yeah.
You just left your team and didn't sign with another.
Yeah,
It's just-
that was
you just-
it.
You became a streamer.
You became an analyst or a streamer.
Right.
Done.
That's how you know. Like Pimp never really announced he was retiring. He just kind of kept getting a job as an analyst. And I guess Pimp is done playing. So, but let's get into the title discussion for this episode, and that is mental health and gaming. And I say gaming as a very broad spectrum because it's something we can all relate to. And of course, it's going to kind of all relay back to esports and everything, but I truly do think that this is something that our listenership can really relate to, because we all game, right? Sure, you might not play. Maybe you've never played competitively in a game on a team and practiced and gone to tournaments and all that, but you've definitely played a game. And I think everyone at one point in time has had a bad day and thought, I just want a game. Like I'm mentally out of it, and I just want a game to cope with it. It's been recently in the news with Prince Harry, right? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Stating that there should be a ban for Fortnite because it is
in the UK.
In the UK, I'm sure everywhere. I don't know why he would.
Yeah, I mean, he
it's
just singled out the UK.
it's-
Yeah.
But he stated that there should be a ban of Fortnite because it's addictive, right? It's geared to making kids addictive to buying the skins or playing it, and they spend all day on the computer. And that pretty much started a S-storm about, of course, the whole ramification of there's no proof gaming has addiction and causes addiction and blah blah blah.
Well, there is a correlation, I believe, to gaming and an addiction. Now, whether that causes like other mental health issues, that's to be seen or talked about by people way smarter than me, right? But there is an addictive nature to a lot of the games that we play, right? Wouldn't you say, like when games give you loot boxes or season passes that require you to have playtime in order to level up, like it's just or you're playing a game like the Division, it's a gear based like loot grinder type game.
Yeah,
um they have an addictive nature to it. That's what they're supposed to have from a developer
right.
standpoint, a reason to make
If
you
you were
come back.
developing a game that didn't make people want to go back and play it over and over again, what are you doing?
Yeah, like World of Warcraft, Fortnite's another great example though. Like, the game is set up with their season pass feature that is requires you just to put in time, and just so
Well,
by
and in
nature you're
general,
gonna have
games
to
are
do it.
designed to make you feel good, right?
Yeah.
It's meant
But,
to have a good feeling while playing. Whether
but
that
then
be
to
because you're playing Dark Souls and you just the self accomplishment of winning or beating a boss or something after dying 100 times, or having a progression thing like with the season passes now that games do.
I think where he was wrong in it is using this as a reason to like, hey, this is gonna cure some bigger issue if we ban Fortnite, right? Like
Right.
this is gonna solve some sort of, if you ban Fortnite, people are just gonna go to the next game or the next thing that gives them an addictive rush, whether that be skydiving, bungee jumping. I mean, watching porn, whatever it may be. What are you gonna keep banning one thing after another that has an
Yeah.
addictive feature? So
And to me, it's lazy. It's a lazy opinion, right?
yeah,
Like, it's not getting to the root of the issue, which is, I would say a good 90% of the people that would be addicted to a video game would find another vice to latch onto and be addicted to if it's not video games. So, I mean, it's
Let me
kind of
show you my
ignoring
Pokemon
the
cards.
core. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ignoring a deeper issue that people have, and just using video games as a scapegoat, and that to me just kind of ticks me off. I'm open to the discussion that
Absolutely.
some video games maybe are are addicting to the point where there needs to be some monitoring or what have you, but just a kind of blanket statement that video games are the cause of blah
Yeah, if he
is
said, "Hey, look, I think we should make it mandatory that you just almost like the play 60, how NFL always tries to say, look, just get out for 60 minutes a day and go
yeah.
play something. Just get out, right? Get moving."
that's not
That's
the
a different
developer's job.
message.
That's a parent's jobs too, right?
Exactly.
Like
Of
if
course,
your
that's what I'm saying.
kids,
But you're to blame games that you're not moving is a side story, right? It's like, okay, so what? You don't want to play video games? Would you? Okay, now I'm confused. Am I talking to Prince Harry or my wife? So you don't want me to play video games? Would it be better if I just sat on the couch and watched TV all night?
as long as it's with her.
as long as as long
Then
as
it
I'm
is
tickling
better.
her back or something, right? It's all okay in that sense.
But why
Um,
can't you play video games with you, Tim? All right. There's two sides of this coin.
um, you've
I'm
seen
just
my
poking
wife
the
play
bear
video
now.
games, okay? It's
I've seen
not
her play
me.
video games. Never mind.
She's the one I'm afraid of. You think I rage while playing games?
Gonna get you banned on Twitch.
Let me show you my wife while playing Mario Kart. My God. Um, but no, I think we've had the discussion too about video games and violence, right? When the whole, I think it was like when the Madden
Call of
shooting
Duty,
happened, we
It
right?
had
was
a discussion
Madden.
about
Yeah,
gun
it's like,
violence and influences. Do video games influence violence? And of course, you get the people on Twitter that are like, "This is an idiotic statement." And my same thing to them, and I say the same thing to the people who jumped on Prince Harry of saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Video games have no effect on addiction or mental stability. And I say, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's kind of the tug of war in this discussion is no one really knows because everybody is different. When you're playing a game, everyone gets addicted to something else, like we mentioned, whether it be because that makes you feel good, or you get the rush of opening up loot boxes, or you have that progression bar that you just have to keep filling and filling and filling. Or, maybe you're just the casual who gets on, sees a progression bar, and says, I don't really care where I'm at the end of the season, right? Everybody is different, but there is some type of, there's some warrant to that discussion of, hey, do video games affect my mental stability, at times? Like if I'm getting done playing Overwatch for a night and then all of a sudden, someone wants to like try to have fun or like, I don't know, try to joke around, right? Maybe you're not in the joking manner after playing Overwatch. And right there, it does affect you personally, right? It affects you mentally because you're just like, that was the most stressful 4 matches of my life trying to play in comp.
Yeah, and I mean that just goes to a dipper. Dang, I'm gonna struggle tonight, guys. Just goes to a deeper issue of just maybe like a self-realization, right? Like because I could say the same thing about a day at work. Like I could
Yeah.
have a huge rough day at work, come home and just like snap at my wife because I had a bad day.
So what you're
I
saying
mean,
is we
so
should all stay at home.
that's right.
We
Everyone
should
should
ban
just not
working.
work. Yeah, ban working, ban video games, ban
It's kind of sad that
everything.
we see like we only hear about one side of this discussion when it comes to just the news in general, right? It's like what is the effect of video games in a negative manner?
Mm-hmm.
I wish people would also look at the other flip side of that as the good that it's done for people from a mental health standpoint. For me, it's not like I've ever been clinically diagnosed with depression or anything like that, but I've been through some tough times, right? Like things that are just difficult.
Yeah,
I think we
everyone
can all say
has.
we have. We've all been through really tough moments. And for me, an outlet from those moments or to get away from it or to feel better or to lift my spirits, a lot of times was to turn to gaming. And a lot of that gets neglected, in my opinion, when they discuss the mental effect from, what is gaming doing to you? What is it causing violence? Is it causing depression? Is it, causing people to become more introverted and not being able to communicate on the face to face type level, whatever it may be. I feel like there's just such a big positive aspect that it's brought to my life, and I'm assuming a lot of our listeners and us in particular.
Yeah, and okay, so let me preface this. Not a doctor, not a psychologist. I have 2 kids, and I'm not trying to tell anybody how to parent or what have you, but I mean, it all comes down to just being versatile in your life, right? Like, don't don't do one thing for a long period of time because yeah, that's going to affect you. Just be versatile. Like Tim said, go out and play. You know, have your downtime in video games. Just be well-rounded, I think
Mm-hmm.
is what it comes down to. And a lot of the people that and in esports that flame out, I mean, these guys are playing like 10 to 15 hours of video games a day. They don't get out. It's very competitive and they just flame. And I mean that maybe that's just a product of not having anything else going on, you know,
And I
in
do
their
think
life.
partially that too is, the culture that we have built as gamers, right? And even here, right? It's like I see everyone on and I'm sitting here watching TV and I'm like, "Damn, dude, everyone is on. They're progressing faster than me. I have to get on. I have to get on and catch up." And it's like my wife is like, "You're an idiot." And I'm like, "You don't understand. Like they are going to be so far. I have to get on.
They're
I have
gonna
to."
make fun of me.
Right? Babe, come on. I got to get
I have to
the
get to World
armor.
Tier 5.
She just doesn't
Come on.
understand. But to Anuja's point of like, you don't hear about the good side of gaming. And I think as gamers, as we play games, it's part of our job to have that mature adult conversation about the positive side of gaming. And yet, I see the voices of our industry on Twitter just flaming what Prince Harry has to say, basically saying, "Pff, another idiot trying to talk." Well, last I checked, whether you agree with, you want to talk about useless stuff, Prince Harry, let's not bring up the English monarch still, okay? All right? You're like the Kardashians of England. But besides that, last I checked, he's pretty influential, right? Like, whether he's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. He's freaking Prince Harry speaking his mind, and people are going to listen. So for us just to sit here and flame it, saying you're an idiot, you're wrong, like why don't we take a step back and say, look, I would love to have a conversation with you about this, right? I would love to have a mature conversation about how video games can affect mental health, which can lead into violence. Yes, gaming is not the one source of mental health issues or violence. There are many sources that pile into this that can cause violence, but that does not mean gaming is not part of the equation. And I'm not trying to say it is a part of the equation. I'm just saying for some people, it could be a part of the equation. And this is coming from my background, which, if you listen to the show, it's been brought up very little times, but I studied behavior in college. I have a degree in behavior analysis. I've spent years studying, in special education for autism and schizophrenia. Like I volunteered at the State Living Center here in Texas and helped out the mentally ill. Like and I promise you, right? Not one person there who all had, take 4 people with schizophrenia, all of them different, right? Like everyone's like, oh, what causes this? What causes that? But that's the thing will drive you mad is there's not one cause of anything. There's a very, it's just a random thing that can throw in a random equation, and that could be their reason why. So to ignorantly say gaming has nothing to do with it, no, we don't even have to look at gaming, right? Just ignore it. Ignore gaming and you'll be fine. No one ever has mental issues who gets from video games. That's just as ignorant as saying gaming is 100% the reason.
Yeah, I think like we've all said, I think there is an opportunity here to kind of all educate ourselves a little bit, but it is one of those things where there's never going to be a definite answer for the reasons that you just mentioned. But to rule it out of the equation, just comes across wrong, especially with all the issues that you're having here in the U.S. when it does, come to gun violence and just mental health issues and just the stuff that is now going on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm not saying gaming is a root cause of any of that. In fact, I don't think it is.
Right.
But that's my personal opinion. But at least for it to be brought up as part of the discussion, just like anything else, should be in this situation, whether it be, our school. I mean, just anything you're doing in day to day life should be kind of looked into at this point as a root cause for it. But it's just one of those things, man. It's just tough. People deal with it in so many different ways, and good or bad, there's probably some right on all sides of the line there.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into the other side of it too, which is affects retirement from Overwatch League and like really the root cause. Earlier we just kind of discussed the actual effect of him leaving the team and how that may affect the team. I will say this. I will miss Effect as a player. I will not miss saying Effect effects every time I have to bring up his name. That drives me nuts, but I don't know another word for effect to really replace it.
Well, it's too late to break out the thesaurus now.
Yeah, there's no point in trying to learn stuff, so I'm dug in now. But he came out with his real twit longer, and it is quite long, but it's quite damning, really. I mean, it's powerful stuff. If you haven't read it, I will retweet it at the Center Ring on our account. But it's very like it's pretty heavy stuff to read, and especially when you think like the majority of their fan base is younger, right? Hopefully, this is opening up a lot of people's eyes of saying like, oh, like there are actual people behind the screens that we're watching, and there's, take away a professional gamer when you're in a 5-man in Counter-Strike, or if you're in a comp or a quick play in Overwatch or Dota or whatever, the people that you're playing against are actual people with real life problems, and you don't know what they're going through. And hey, shame on me, right? I'm pot calling the kettle black here, okay? Because I talk trash, I rage, I will flip out,
No,
and I'll
you
say
don't,
regrettable things.
Ted. No.
But I still acknowledge the fact that that's not right, and I think as a society we should change. Blah blah blah. So,
It's-
but this isn't about me. This is not about
This
me.
isn't about- no, it's not about me.
This is no. Well, that's for my therapist. That's what I pay them for. No, for effects letter, and I'm just gonna read parts of it. Okay, but it starts. I always carry a sense of shame around with me, but some days that feeling of shame gets so severe that I get strong urges to kill myself. I should just forget about it and do productive, positive things, but I can't do that. I get filled with an endless negative thought and the idea that everything is meaningless in my life. Jumping forward, he goes, Overwatch got released. I played Overwatch because I wanted to become the star in the game. I made strategy posts. I posted YouTube channels. I started streaming, and I tried my best. There was no space to think of the negative thoughts because I had my hands full. But because of that, I ended up getting here, but too much time has passed. Overwatch hasn't changed at all. The game itself couldn't tug at my interest anymore, and thus he's back at his old ways. And he pretty much said he's super depressed. No matter how he tries thinking positive thoughts or anything like that, he can't get away from it. And that's very, very important. That's really the key to take away from this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this just goes back to what I said earlier, being well-rounded. He even says right there in his letter, he put all of his time and energy into this one sport that, a good part of his young adult life is kind of passing him by, right? So that just goes back to, if we can just take anything away from this, it's just, again, be well-rounded. Surround yourself with positive people. Go out and unwind and do something else. Know when to get away from something that just stresses you out. And, for any young professional player, like, Zachary or, Super or Space, get out. There is life outside of your sport.
Yeah.
Don't flame yourself out.
And I think part of it
Well,
too
with that is that's like everybody's going to be different in that aspect, right? Like for Effect, he realizes there's an issue, and that's the most important thing that I take away from it, is the fact that he understands something is not right here, and he needs to step away for himself to figure out what it is. Obviously, it's something that's like really deep rooted in him right now. It's it sounds like it's just eating away at him, but he recognizes there's a problem. So I don't think it's necessarily like, hey, be well rounded. Like, hey, if you can grind 15 hours a day and you love doing it, and it's your passion to become, the best at the game that you're playing, do it. If that's what you can do and it's making you happy and it's bringing you the joy that you're looking for, and then, again, that's just what you want out of it, do it. That I have no problems with that. I think it's just important to recognize when there is an issue, and hey, I am sitting here for 10, 12 hours playing. I'm not getting any joy out of this. This has just become, only a job for me at this point in time. Like, that sounds like what Effect's going through right now. But I think to, like, like you said, like a Zachary or these guys, like, hey, they're young, they have the ability to do it. They're crafting they're building their brand, they're crafting their art right now. So again, it's not necessarily like being well-rounded means going outside. It's just
Yeah.
being healthy in life, right? So
Mhm.
that's from an eating standpoint, getting some sort of exercise. It doesn't have to be like, hey, go outside and play and run laps and, you know, do whatever. Like, it's not that, and that's not what we're trying to tell people to do. It's just having a healthy balance in life. Again, that comes from nutrition, that comes from either exercise or working out. But if you could sit there and play for 20 hours and stream and make money and be the best of your game, hell, I would love to do it right now. Like, I want to be that person at 33 years old, as crazy as
Right.
it sounds. Like,
But I think
that's a
and too,
dream.
that's
you
part
know?
we've always talked about too, like especially with Overwatch League or these, like the new thing now is like the team psychologist. Nifty actually talked about it one time in Queue Up. which is the Envy podcast, of how important was it when he was on Renegades and when he moved to Envy, how important it was that they had a team psychologist that he felt comfortable with going to and just talking, right? And for some people, that's all they need, right? They just need that time to go away and talk about private stuff, emotional stuff, whatever, right?
It,
To someone they feel comfortable about.
and it's good that these teams are adapting to this. Astralis, Envy. I mean, those are the two teams that kind of stand out in my mind that really put an impact on that and an emphasis on that. But I mean, this is something new. I mean, esports is growing. I feel like esports is there's a bigger competitive pool than there is in any traditional sport. And your time at the peak of your level is not as long as it would be in a traditional sport. I mean, we're
I mean, it
seeing
could
these
be
guys retire
months.
in their mid 20s, right?
Months.
So
Yeah.
players like Effect, who is 21 years old, I mean, he's in the prime of his career, and maybe these guys feel like they have to grind to stay at the top of the
Well, they
game,
do.
and it's just good.
It's not like they don't have
Yeah, and
to
it's
feel that way. They have to grind
exactly.
to stay
So
at
I
the
mean,
top of their game.
so it's good that teams are adapting along with the growth of the game, and just these guys are I mean, some of these guys aren't even like full-fledged adults
Right.
yet. It's
But
insane.
I think too,
Moving to new
because
cities.
again, I want to talk both sides of it here. There are teams that are adapting, and then there are teams that are not. Right? I can promise you that there are second tier teams, hell, even teams in the Overwatch League, the top tier teams in Counter Strike that are drill sergeants, right? To where if Effect was on another team, who knows how this would have ended up? What if the team wasn't super supportive of him? What if they were like, "No, you got to get in here and practice, or you're riding the bench. Who cares? You got to practice. Get in here and go." I mean, you've heard horror stories of that before in like team houses where the culture is just not that family vibe, right? Which I think Team Envy really is good at creating. Um, there are teams out there that unfortunately haven't caught up to the whole fact that these are kids or young adults and going on. I know
Yeah, this
Doug brought up I want to bring up one point that Doug brought up in the Twitch chat, saying that it's. He says, I think the question is the chicken and the egg dilemma. What came first, gaming or mental health issues? Where's the evidence that games were the catalyst? I think that goes back to our point earlier, is that I'm not saying, or we're not saying, games are the catalyst. It's just they're there, right? They can be part of the equation on, how some people might get sunken into them in an unhealthy manner. Everyone's different.
But then again, to my point earlier, we also realize that if it's not video games, for a lot of these people, it would be something else or some other
Yeah.
vice
I mean, you hear
that
it
they would
where
latch onto.
people are depressed and so they run, and they run to the point where it's unhealthy, you know? You've read stories on that.
It's kind of cool, and we haven't touched on it at all. Too late to even jump into it now. I know you just brought up Astralis here a moment ago, and that's a whole different mental aspect that comes into play here is with these sports psychologists, right? Astralis was a team that was always, as TSM, and they turned into Astralis. This team was known for choking. And it became like a mental game for them in a whole different way, right? Like they couldn't get over the hurdle because they were always third, second, they could never win the big match. And they hired a sports psychologist. They took the game from more of a business like approach. Um, Instead of just five kids living in a gaming house type approach. Not to say that they were doing that before necessarily, but they took it to another level from a mental aspect, and that's turned it around for them. We've seen them, have probably the most iconic run in CS history. So there's even that just side of it, which teams I think are starting to become more aware of, and you're seeing it at a higher level in tier one esports than ever before. I would assume most tier one like proper esports organizations have some sort of sports psychologist. Um, they're helping evaluate the players as well as just being there for players as an outlet. If they're not doing it, they definitely should, because we know A, that it works, right? There's like living proof
Hmm.
out there that it works. And B, why not, why not afford them that ability so you can avoid issues? And whether fuel had it or not is besides the point. It's just having that person there as an outlet, I think, is going to be
Right.
important with
And
what we're expecting of them.
say
Well,
the fuel does have a psychologist and affect talk to him every day.
well,
Maybe this is where they ended up, right? I
Yeah,
mean that,
exactly.
and,
This
and
could
that's
be
one
the
important thing, right? Is your team psychologist is a psychologist first, and he's there
yeah,
for the team. You
yeah
know
and
what I'm
we
saying? He's
and
there
we
for the
for the
know
player.
players.
and
Yeah,
we know that the fuel and Envy for that matter, they put the players or try to put the players in the best point possible. We had a conversation with Astro where he talked about Felix XQC and said, "Hey, we tried. Like we tried to give him all the help possible, gave him people to talk to." So, I mean, they're doing what they can. I'm not
Right.
saying that you said that they didn't, Tim, but I just wanted to make that point,
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's out there that, he was going through some things that go beyond what the fuel could
Yeah. I guess
do to
my
fix the
my
this
point
problem.
sounds
is
more like the solution
that's
versus
yes, that's a
like
perfect
this
way
was
of
the
saying it.
solution was for him to probably, at this point at least, he's still 21, like we've said 100 times. He could come back if he wants to come back. But at this point in time in his career, he needs to step away and take care of himself and put himself first. And that's important.
Yeah.
And like I said, that sounds like, based on what he's dealing with, was probably the best case scenario here, is for him to get help and get taken care of at this point in time.
Yeah. I think that was the best way I could have put it. That's what my point was trying to make, is that just because if this situation rises where a player feels like he has to leave for his better, for to better himself, that doesn't mean like the psychologist isn't working, right? A good psychologist should be there for you, right? It's look, if this isn't working out, like go man, like go for yourself. Don't feel like you have to be here for the team. That's you know part of it. That's part of that mental health uh, outlook, I guess, is what you can call it. So that being said, before we get too drawn out on it, if you are a listener and maybe you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I'm going through some of my own stuff. I will say that my DMs are always open on Twitter. If maybe you are that type that just needs somebody to talk to, you just want to vent, you can always hit me up. I have not talked about it on the show. I wasn't sure if I was going to on this episode, but I am. On last March, I had a phone call from a family member, and I remember that it was it's gonna be last. I'm not an emotional guy. I normally deflect with jokes and inappropriate humor, but this is not the time. I remember last March, it was the day before we recorded. I got a phone call at like 10:30 at night, which is never good if you get a phone call at 10:30 at night. Like I'm too old for like a 10:30 booty call from my wife, so it's not good. And it was a phone call letting me know that a very close family member of mine was in the hospital and attempted suicide. I haven't told anyone this. One person, and it's just the way my family works. My family, it's I remember when I first got the phone call and I said, "Hey, so and so's in the hospital. They tried to kill themselves." My instant reaction was, "Okay, are they okay?" They're doing as good as one can be, and I said, "Okay, keep me updated." And that's just how we work. We're not an emotional type. We don't dwell on it. It is what it is. That's how I've always grown up, for better or for worse. And I remember thinking, you get angry that, like, wow, I can't believe that they tried that, right? Like you always hear like they're selfish. They're not thinking about other people. And I remember thinking I was upset because now my family is a statistic. You know, we are that one out of however many families that are affected by suicide. And for me, I don't know why, but that bothered me. That I was like, now we're a statistic. Where before we were just like everyone else, now there's something wrong with the family. And you know that over time, my family member is okay now. It's been over a year. They're flourishing. We are flourishing as a family. And I realized that there was nothing wrong with being a statistic or what they did. Um, it's the bravest thing that they could have done was to ask for help. You know, they could have easily drank the bottle of whiskey and took that bottle of pills and just sat on the couch and let it happen. But the bravest thing my family member could have done is call for help in quick enough time. And so what I'm trying to say here is just to get the story out as a listener, it is the bravest thing you can do. Don't feel like you are weak or insignificant if you have to ask for help. Don't be embarrassed that you think someone's going to make fun of you. You know, you know, you might see it on Twitter where people are making fun of people or on games, right? Like I said, I'm guilty of it too, of being a jerk on games. And you think, well, what if I come out and say something? Will my friends think less of me? Will people think less of me? Yeah. F them. That's all I can say. They're not your friends if they think that. So it really is life changing when you go through something like that on a personal level. Like not even like friends, right? It was like that's like it's my own blood, and I never thought we would be in that situation. So it's very eye opening, and you really just don't know how you'll handle it until you're in that situation. So my peace offering to anyone going in that situation, if you feel like it will help, if you are having a bad day, go ahead and message me on Twitter or something if it helps. I do have here the suicide prevention lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's not going to work for everyone. But for those who think it might, talking about it, for me personally, helps. So if you're having a bad day, if you're having those bad thoughts, try giving it a call. You never know. It could really turn things around. You know, maybe it's just that maybe you're just nervous about making that one phone call to make things better. Just make that one phone call. Go to that one friend and see what happens. You know, don't wait to drink that bottle of alcohol and take that bottle of pills to make that phone call. You know, get out ahead of it and you'll be better for it. So on that note, I didn't mean to
Way to bring down the
show.
room, Tim.
Yeah,
God.
I didn't mean to bring down the show. MIBR sucks, so we have that to make us happy about as we get into some e-news. Star Series Season 7 wrapped up over the weekend. MIBR got 12. That's the only reason I need to live, baby. That's the only reason. As they lose to Renegades, NRG, and North.
They got spanked in those games, though. They
they are not looking good.
They're not. Yeah, this has been a mess.
We were just talking about it. I think was it last week where we were like, so how many more tournaments can they go? And we are like, it's still early. They'll turn it around. I don't think they're.
I don't know if turning it around is necessarily the right thing, but that was a tough showing for them. It was good to see like NRG and Renegades both played well in this tournament. You know, that was obviously a big plus coming out of there, and kind of went back into the middle of the pack. They didn't necessarily show up as much as we were hoping. Another team that was again at the bottom of this list, if you notice, is FaZe. Another team that continues to struggle, and it's mind-blowing the money that's spent probably between MIBR and FaZe to see where they're at in from a competitive standpoint right now. And the winner of this whole thing is everybody except for Astralis. Like, it was nice that they weren't in a tournament for a change. We got to see a new winner. Navi came out on top, beating Fnatic in the finals. Actually spanked him, man. The finals,
3-0.
unfortunately, were at a really rough time. It was like 3 a.m. our time, but they did. They 3-0'd him. Simple played great. This was probably, I think this was the best plus minus of his career throughout a tournament. It was like plus 160 something, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
he's on a whole
So,
new level, dude.
really just elevating his game, continues to elevate his game. But yeah, he's obviously walking away the MVP from this event, and Navi's walking around with the cool 250.
NRG and Renegades got third and fourth. You got to see a little
They
bit of Tarek there. So it looked, I mean, yeah, can't complain about that being your first outing and you get third and fourth. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
This week you have Blast Pro Series Miami. It's coming up this weekend. Pretty good little tournament there. People upset Cloud9 got invited. Get over it.
Well, they're still gonna,
not
people
invited.
want to watch them. So
Yeah,
regardless of
they're
what you
the
think,
NA
like,
team to
it's-
watch. So you're gonna get it.
Yeah.
I'm still like, it's like what, 2 years ago you only had one Blast Pro Series event, and now it seems like they're just everywhere. So, but they put on a good show.
Basically, they do put on a good show, and it's nice that this is like a pretty select grouping of teams. Again, we'll see MIBR and FaZe fall up against the big boys. Like, this is going to be another opportunity for them to either sink or swim.
Yep. Overwatch Stage 2 started last weekend. Variety to the meta. I think, the big question was what was going to happen with the meta, with the new patches. Were we going to see as goats all the time? I'm pleasantly happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, you still see goats out there, but you're seeing more variants of it, right? Like, you're seeing more DPS, which is nice. And you got a Baptiste sighting. What was it? The Fusion that played him
Yeah,
for
I think
on Anubis.
not Shanghai.
So
Someone did.
So it's interesting to kind of see what's going on. Good for our local boys, like we had mentioned last week, to kind of see what teams are doing and
Yeah.
kind of build off of it and counter it.
Yep. In other Overwatch Blizzard news, Blizzard bans yet another emoji that you cannot do in Arena and Twitch chat, and that is the OK symbol.
This is like almost topic worthy at this point. Like, this is getting a little ridiculous.
As I guess it's linked to white supremacy. So they tell me.
Well, so are white people, but should we ban them from the show? Like, come on.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Get off
The
my
Florida
show, Tim.
Mayhem
Pepe,
did, so
and now, like,
maybe they're just
the
ahead of it.
thumbs up, or the, I thought it meant a whole
Florida
different
Mayhem
thing. I thought
banned
it meant
white
like
people.
a-hole. Did it not? Did this not mean a-hole at some point?
I've always
Or
known
wh-
it
what
as
was the whole,
okay,
like-
or
It was
the punching, like the got you. Like, if you did it to someone, then you could
Yeah,
punch
like if
him
you
in
get
the
them to
shoulder.
see it or something,
Yeah, like
like
see it below your waist, and you could punch him.
look,
that
I'm
was
not letting
always-
white supremacists take that from me. That
No.
is ours.
Yeah,
That's ours
so-
and it's staying.
And the fact that like one person complained about it because someone did it in the crowd, and then like I felt so bad because the person like tweeted saying like, I'm really
Yeah.
sorry. I didn't know it was about white supremacy. Had I known, I wouldn't have done it. And like they were like really felt bad. And I'm like, everyone was like, dude, you did nothing wrong. Like he said, he goes, me and my friends just do it as like a gotcha thing. And
Yeah,
he's like, I felt like that was a good time. I was like, no, you nailed it. You nailed it.
that
Don't
was
worry about it.
perfect. The ultimate
So,
gotcha.
The
You
fact
got a whole race.
it's just getting out of hand. Out of hand. It's
Yep.
for a gaming company, they seem to be severely out of touch.
Dude, seriously.
And in other news, we were actually going to talk about this on today's episode, but it got bumped with all of Effects goodbye letter and retirement letter. Goodbye letter seems a little inappropriate with the content, but
Yeah. Yeah, Tim.
oh, we laugh. Because laughing is the best medicine. Rocket League announced that in their upcoming esports store, which I still don't really know what's going to be involved there, they are going to have revenue sharing, which is pretty huge, I think. So maybe we'll
Yeah,
talk about
it's-
that more on an episode or anything like that coming up, but that's pretty big. Pretty big for
A
Rocket
step
League.
closer to another franchise, right? So
Well, it's kind of like a weird hybrid franchising, right? They haven't
yeah,
franchised. You can still be any team in it, and yet if you're in the pro league, I guess you get part of the revenue sharing. So it's kind
and
of like this best of both worlds.
and for our Rocket League players, that's the same time that the next season pass starts. So
There you go.
get in early, get those
There you go.
skins. Rocket League does a really good job. Oh, can't do that. Sorry.
Yeah, please don't. Doug,
Can
in
I? What
Twitch
if
chat
I
is
do it?
now
What does it
banned.
mean?
He did it.
If I do it, is there still like the same connotation?
That means if you
So,
do this,
no,
you get to punch someone
this
twice.
is funny.
Right?
It's funny that you bring this up. Because in game, Zenyatta, which is like supposed to be like the Indian monk, does the symbol. Now, of course, with
Yeah.
a monk, you just assume it's for meditation reasons, but maybe Zenyatta is secretly a racist.
So what you're saying? Symbols can have more than one meaning?
Shocked. I
Unbelievable.
know, right? Just don't ever look up the history of the swastika, or Buddhas might be really upset with you.
They face different ways. That's the difference.
Sure. So does the OK symbol. Everything else. Anyways, we'll see what Blizzard decides to ban next week. Maybe the thumb up or something. Maybe we can convince them. I feel like we should just do a bit now where we just do different symbols with our hands and just convince Blizzard that they're all just super racist and see if
Just
we
start
can
attending
ban
events and holding up a different sign every time.
everything. Everything. Good stuff. Good stuff today, guys. It's a good show. Different show, but I enjoyed the discussion. Had good discussion in Twitch chat. Maybe we'll have good discussion on our Twitter at the Center Ring if you listened and you have an opinion on it. These are my favorite episodes, honestly, because I feel like they start the conversation, right? Maybe people think we're morons for thinking that gaming isn't completely innocent in the world of mental issues and violence and everything, or at least that's my opinion, but that's just one man's opinion on a podcast no one listens to except for our moms, and even then it's questionable. And Doug in Twitch chat. Our moms and Doug. It's the only person.
That's all we need.
That's all we need. That's all we need. It's just how good can you fluff the listener numbers, right? I do appreciate everyone for listening, though. Even if you skipped around, if you listened to the whole thing, I love you all the same. Follow us on Twitter at The Center Ring. Let us know what you think of the show. We will be back next Monday at 8:30 discussing more esports fun. Again, I preface, just to give one last shout out, I hope all of our listeners are doing great with mental health or social anxiety issues. But if you have any, need to talk, let me know. Oh gosh, that's the end. This is awkward. The music ended before I finished talking.
I
We'll
feel
start
so
it up
naked.
Right? Man, I wasn't paying attention to the clock. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week for a new Tribret. I'm Tib. We'll see ya.